Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for listening to From the Gate podcast, where we bring you game, good times, and genuine conversation. I'm Lisi.
Shush.
Let's get it. What is up, everybody? Welcome to From the Gate podcast, and today we are talking about something that has been on the news a lot recently, and that is the dismantling of, or Trump's proposal to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education. And while I was watching the news this morning, there were a bunch of students that were advocating for their after-school programs because obviously a lot of after-school programs are funded by the federal government. So DOE is the biggest funding resource when it does come to after-school programs as well as extended learning activities, which focuses on STEM projects that are very heavy in science, technology, math, and engineering. And mathematics. I can't forget about mathematics, everyone's favorite subject. Not really. But the U.S. Department of Education is facing potential elimination or significant restructuring coming up this year, or most likely to start in the new school year, but who's to say? Fiscal year usually starts in September, and so it would finish off whatever the remainder of this year is, whatever funding that they have for this year would finish off that, and then see from there kind of where all of their funding for these after-school programs would come from. And so the U.S. Department of Education, federal portion of it at least, is they provide federal funding for all these K through 12 programs that support Title I schools, low-income schools, and support students with disabilities. This is also where student loan programs come from, as well as they have a lot of federal oversight in terms of telling the schools, oh, you need to implement this, you need to implement that, you need to implement these types of protections for these certain types of students, and they are supposed to be ensuring quality education for all students. And so right now, it is not, Trump can't just say, oh, I don't want Department of Education anymore, and then that's it. No, that's not possible. So, but what he can do is he can create an executive order, and then it goes to Congress, and then Congress gets the final say as to whether or not it's dismantled or it gets restructured. And so abolishing the Department of Education, can it happen? I don't know. Let's talk about it. And so right now, it's not a matter of just signing a document and then that's it. No, Congress has the final say as to whether or not the Department of Education, A, gets completely eliminated, or B, gets restructured. Just completely restructured. So what does this mean for schools? What does it mean for schools? What does it mean for students? What does it mean for teachers? What does it mean for higher education and after school programming? And is this just a case to dismantle DOE, or is it to rip public education apart and put it back together? Because I know that there's a lot of talk about how the public education system or public school education system is not always in the best interest of all students. It's kind of like, and so let's kind of look at what it would mean to eliminate the Department of Education. Department of Education, they are the ones who oversee like all the federal funding. They are the ones who enforce all the civil rights protections, and they ensure that students have access to, well, they're supposed to make sure that all students have access to quality education. So if it's eliminated, Trump's stance on all of this is that he says, eliminate DOE, return educational responsibilities back to the states, because who knows how to best manage their education system than their leaders, than the states that they are in, because what applies in California doesn't apply to what the education system is in Delaware. what happens in Delaware is not the same as how the education system would be in Florida. And so Trump is basically saying, like, there doesn't need to be a federal Department of Education when each state already has their own Department of Education, and they know and they understand the needs of their students. They know and understand the needs of their teachers. So why would we provide funding for a federal or a national, I guess, Department of Education when each state already has their own way of doing things in terms of education? Because if you look at the standards that each teacher teaches on, they don't entirely follow a set US standard of education. While yes, they provide like a structured framework that they expect from all school districts, the school districts go according to whatever state standards there are. So like the state of Illinois, the state of Illinois doesn't go according to the California standards. California standards don't go according to Hawaii standards. Hawaii standards don't go according to the Nevada standards, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? And so each state understands what they need to do in order to best service their students, best service their teachers, service the needs of the communities that are in those states. And so if the Department of Education is eliminated, the states would take full control of education, how education is run in their state. So then it would become part of the oversight of the governor instead of the president and the US director of education or whatever. And so wealthier states that have like strong income taxes, they might be fine, but lower income states, that's where it becomes kind of an issue because they rely on this federal funding since they don't have a lot of state income taxes that cover the programs that are in their schools and whatnot. And so then, well, that begs the question, well, should the state then look more into if they really do care about the quality of education that their students and that their communities receive as much as they say they do? Now this is their time to put their money where their mouth is and to start learning how to allocate funds from the state taxes that they do receive and putting that into their own education system in order to build up their education system in their states. So it could be a struggle for some in the beginning, but eventually they'd be this is my personal opinion, by the way, just to say. So it could be a struggle in the beginning because they're gonna have to restructure, each state is gonna have to restructure their budgets. But in the long run, they no longer have to answer to all these like federal regulations of assessments and everything, because right now with how DOE is, they have all their federal tests and assessments and state-based standard tests or whatever. And so it no longer becomes a part of the Department of Education to assess the students, but the state now has more power in how they assess their students and what needs to be done in order to improve the quality of education in their states. And so, but before we go into all the negatives, let's look back at the pros and the cons of this. So, pros and cons of eliminating DOE. Let's start with the in favor of shutting down the DOE. Mind you, I used to be in education for a very long time. And so it I don't know, there's like things that I liked and things that I didn't like about the education system, but let's go into this. So pros, it would be more local control, where some would argue that the states and local governments should have full control over education and that the federal government should not have a right to interfere in what the state says is best for their kids, especially because who knows them better? Like if you can kind of look at it as like a family, right? With a mom, dad, and their kids. Yeah, these like outside childhood experts can come in and be like, "Oh, you should parent your kids this way because according to studies, this is this, that." But who knows how to take care of that kid best than the person that is there at home with them all the time, the mom and dad, right? Same exact concept in terms of giving the power back to the states to be able to take care of their kids, right? Because the state knows best the how to serve their community. They understand the needs of their community better versus like these like federal experts who come in once every blue moon to assess and then be like, "Oh, I think this is what you need to be doing in order to make your education system better." When in reality, or they're looking like, "Oh, well this worked in this state." Like I was saying, so this could allow for more tailored education policies that better fit the local communities that these states serve. Second pro would be that there is less federal bureaucracy. So right now, the DOE has a huge budget of $79 billion. And some believe that cutting this could help with reducing inefficiencies that are currently, which is why they want to dismantle DOE in the first place, because they're like, well, why are we putting $79 billion into a department when we could easily allocate that $79 billion into the states, and each state would be able to use whatever portion of that money that they receive in order to better their education system. And so instead of it, and there are some people who think that this could help with streamlining education funding, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Potential for lower taxes. So eliminating the DOE could also mean that we don't have to pay as much education taxes. And right now, that would actually mean that taxpayers, it puts more money in taxpayers' pockets. Because right now, as part of this income, the federal income tax that you pay, or not income tax, the federal taxes that we pay, a portion of that goes towards the Department of Education. But if we no longer have to pay for the Department of Education as part of our taxes, that could help with decreasing the amount of taxes that we do pay to the federal government, which eventually in the end means that we get more money back, or that we can keep more of our paychecks that we work extremely hard to earn. And for people like me who don't really have kids, like, I understand. I this may sound shallow of me. I don't mind having to give to like a school or whatever if I feel like there is a need there. More of my hard-earned money that I'm already struggling to use to like pay for certain things or whatever, then I'm all for it. And finding ways to allocate taxpayer money better, I'm all for it. Because something that a lot of people are facing right now with the current job structure. I mean, look, Veterans Affairs, it came on the news this morning that they're looking at laying off 80,000 people. Or not even laying off 80,000 people, getting rid of, reducing that workforce. And so, of course, those 80,000 people are going to be out there trying to look for jobs in the regular job circuit right now, which is already crazy hard to get into in the first place.
But who's to say that they're going to do that, though? You don't know that.
It was already on the news that they already sent
But
them
you
their
don't know
letters
that
of resignation.
they're going to try to. They're going to try to fix their job that they have now to get that straight, because that's their main source of income. Why would they say, "Oh, now I got to go look"? They won't say that.
Well, because they're basically being terminated.
Okay, but
Because they're getting rid of those roles that are those jobs currently. So,
well, you can't speak for people that you don't know that is going to do that. You don't know that.
I mean, they can go fight for their jobs. Not doesn't mean that they're going to get paid for fighting back for their jobs to get back.
But you don't know what they're going to do, though.
I'm just saying that the job market is going to be a lot more competitive now with a lot of these federal people who are losing their jobs and having to go look for jobs elsewhere in order to live.
It should be, because you have to go through 3 fucking interviews to even.
Find one job. But yeah, so potential for lowering taxes, there is that potential there where taxpayers get to keep more of their hard-earned money if they were to eliminate the Department of Education and give the power back to the states. This also encourages school choice. So instead of the federal government saying, um, no, you have to be in this particular school or you have to be in this certain district, this would actually make the it would make the grounds an even playing ground for a lot of schools. So this would help with boosting private schools. It would boost charter schools. Um, Homeschooling by removing these federal restrictions and allowing states to create more diverse education options, because now now that it's going to be, if it goes through and if it goes into the power of the states are going to be able to cater their education policies to the way that they know best would help their students and help their kids. And so the cons of this whole shenanigans that's going on right now that Trump is trying to do. Number one, education inequality could get worse because without the federal government saying, oh, like this type of funding needs to go here, this type of funding needs to go there, without the federal government being the ones to tell the states, you need to put this much in this pool, you need to put this much in this pool. Now, the states that do have more income taxes and the districts that receive most of those income taxes, those will continue to thrive because obviously they're the ones that's receiving most of the money, while the areas that have a lot of like low income families and that are struggling, those schools could face a lot of hardship in terms of the meal programs, like having to advocate to the state instead of the federal government for their free meal programs that they have, that there are some kids where that's kind of what they depend on throughout the week. Um, and so stuff like that. Where it comes to the districts that can kind of take care of themselves will be okay, but the districts that do serve in lower income families, what is it? The state is going to have to figure out a way to make it an even playing field for all districts and not just the wealthier districts. This also means that federal student aid is out the door. So any Pell Grants, student loans, financial aid programs, if the states take over, there's no guarantee that this funding would be available. And so this makes college even less accessible for those that um, can't really afford it in the first place and depend on financial aid to be able to afford college. So, what is it that the states are going to do in order to alleviate that burden for the college students that are in their state? Are they going to now create state funding where they offer financial aid to these students, or what would the process be if there's like an out of state student that wants to go to a school like is Stanford. Like if you see like a kid that's in Colorado, in Denver, Colorado, and their dream has always been to go to Stanford, and their their whole but they do need that federal aid in order to be able to have the money to go to Stanford and to complete and to fulfill their dream of going to Stanford. So what is it that the state could do for kids from out of state going to other schools in other states and whatnot? And it just kind of makes it a little bit harder to try to figure out how each state can work together um, in order to assist these students and to support the dreams of these kids. And so another con that this could be is a threat to civil rights protections, because right now it's only the Department of Education, the federal Department of Education, that enforces these laws that protect students with disabilities. They're the ones who put the laws in that all the schools have to uphold, that prevents racial and gender discrimination, upholding like Title X or LGBT rights or whatever. And so without the federal government, these enforcements or these civil rights protections that all schools get to enjoy on an equal playing field would be based on the state. So then the state would be the ones to say that we want to keep these civil right protections for our students. We don't want to use this civil right protection anymore for our students. And so, oh, we don't really want to Our students with disabilities, not big on the forefront for us as a state. We're going to kind of dial it down with funding for that does support students with disabilities and so on and so forth. And so figuring out how to protect students who couldn't otherwise protect themselves and how each state would be able to create policies and enforce laws that do keep these kids safe and enforce these things. And so another thing would be a huge cut to special programs such as like after school programs, that help low income families, early childhood education, so ECE, after school programs that through Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, all these after school initiatives, they rely heavily on funding from the Department of Education. So losing the Department of Education means that a lot of these students that have depended on these after school programs in order to like make things better. So I was watching we're on the news. There was a senior who was advocating for the after school program that he was a part of. It's a STEM after school program. And he was talking about how he comes from a place where there's like a lot of gang violence and whatnot. And so being a part of after school program actually saves him from that because he doesn't have to go home right away. He can go home when his parents go home and then be able to do what he needs to do at school still in order to work on whatever projects he's working on, whatever things that he needs to do in preparation for college. And when the federal funding goes away, these special programs could go away unless the states decide to allocate some of that money to funding after school programs. But of course, each state is probably going to just focus on the school system that they already have in place because that's huge. School systems are huge. The education system is huge. And after school programs are not always going to be on the front line. So, what is it that could possibly happen to help with maintaining these after school programs? I mean, I personally think that there is funding that's out there to help these. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Department of Education has to be the one to provide the funding for this. No, there's other programs that are out there. There's a lot of social or humanities and social justice organizations and education systems that are out there that could assist with filling in the gaps for these special programs. But so while cutting DOE, it sounds like a way to help reduce government control. The reality is it could leave millions of kids without the resources and the education that they need in order to succeed, especially when it comes to after school programming and especially when it comes to extracurricular activities. So, like speech and debate would be kind of like out the window, or like who knows what could happen. Like a lot of STEM programs could suffer from this also. And so, what happens next, right? So, right now, this is just a proposal. Even if Trump has an executive order and says, I want to eliminate the DOE, the Congress can be like, yeah, maybe not eliminate, but maybe let's figure out a way how to fix it because it definitely needs some fixing. You know what I mean? And so education is it's a personal issue for most Americans. It's a personal issue for all countries because education is so important in order to ensure the future of our country. It's the way that we are able to invest in our kids. It's a way to show the kids that, hey, you matter. We care about you. We want you to be able to learn something. We want you to be able to learn and to grow and to flourish. And education is so important. Learning is so important. And so any politician who votes to defund schools, they're definitely going to face major backlash because education is important, 100%, especially K to 12 education is very important. So, with that being said, we are seeing increased efforts to help shift the education away from federal control. Many of the states are already starting to reduce their reliance on federal funds and looking towards their state in order to get funding. So while the DOE might not disappear like that, there is a possibility that there's changes that are happening that and the way that education is funded, the way education is managed, that we could see a restructure. Not so much a complete disappearance, but just a restructure, which I which I think is important, and it's something that I think that needs to be done for the most part. But I think the best thing for us to do at this point is to stay informed. Follow up on updates, follow what's going on in the news, pay attention to what your local and state governments are doing about education funding, advocate for advocate for these students, advocate for your kids, advocate for the kids in your community. If you're, I mean, you don't got kids, but you can still be an advocate to help with keeping this funding and having the federal government figure out a way. Okay, if you're going to take away the DOE and if you're going to take away that um, access to those funds, you need to be able to have a replacement for this. Have a plan to replace these funds that is used in order to benefit the community into and allocate it into other budgets or other federal budgets or whatever it is. So there's definitely a way for it to be done. It just needs some thought into it. Uh, Talk to your representatives, talk to your state representatives. You voted for them for a reason, so that means that you should be able to have them advocate on your behalf. And if you believe that public education needs to be protected, talk to your senators, talk to your congressmen, talk to your or women, talk to your congresswomen or men, talk to your representatives. Public pressure works. They are they are there in the roles that they are in because of you and because of us and because of our votes. So talk to them. That's what they're there for. They're there to help serve the needs of the community. They're not there to serve their own needs. They're there for the needs of the community. So talk to your government officials about how this can be advocated for. Support your local public schools, whether it's donating supplies, volunteering, advocating for state funding for these after school programs, advocating for state funding for just regular programs, advocating for state funding for teacher materials, teacher resources. Talk to your teachers. Talk to your teachers. What they know best on what is needed to be able to support our kids in school. So talk to your teachers, get your teacher support on this, and find out ways that we can help them make this whole situation better. Talk about it on social media if you want to talk about this on social media. Social media is, while I feel like it's a double-edged sword because social media is so, man, I don't know. It's so good sometimes, but sometimes I'm like, bruh, how? This is so stupid, but how? And so there's a lot of ways to tear people down on social media, as I have been a victim of before, but there are a lot of ways to build up also on social media and to make people aware of certain issues and certain things that you care about. And I think that's the power of social media and being able to challenge misinformation and to share facts and make sure that you are doing your research on this stuff and not just taking it for whatever whoever is saying it for. Research it on your own, find out your own facts and information, because at the end of the day, it's not just a political debate that we're doing. This is about the future of our society, it's about the future of our kids, it's about the future of our workforce, and it's about the future of our communities that we're in. And so if we just let the public education system crumble, then we are eventually setting ourselves up for a system where quality learning is a privilege and not a right. And that's not okay. Everybody deserves the right to quality education. Everybody. I don't care if you are from high income, low income, from Timbuktu to Zalamazoo. Everybody deserves the right to a quality education. Everybody deserves the right to learn on an equal playing field. And so that's kind of my thoughts for today. Do I personally think that the DOE should be dismantled? I don't think they should be allocated as $79 billion. Like, I feel like a lot of that money can go to the states in order to help with their education systems. Because, like I said before, I firmly believe that each state knows the needs of their community best. And it would be a lot easier to advocate for funding if you are talking to someone directly from your state versus talking to someone in Washington, D.C., who has no idea about the challenges that your school system is facing. But on the other hand, I do feel like there are programs that DOE does fund that I truly 100% believe are completely essential for our education system. And that's after school programming, extracurricular programming, because it's not just about what you're learning in a classroom. Because, yeah, you can sit in your physics class for 45 minutes a day or 90 minutes for the period or whatever time that it is. I swear, the times have changed so much that it's like, oh, you do 45 minutes in this period, then now it's 90 minutes and whatever the amount of minutes that you spend in a classroom, your learning should not be limited to a classroom. Your learning needs to be expanded to outside of the classroom. And I am a huge advocate of learning outside of your classroom and being able to have those opportunities available to any child, not just the kids who can afford it, but having it available to any child who wants these things. So never stop questioning the gatekeepers. Stay informed, stay engaged. Until next time. Tell us your thoughts. Let us know what you think. Sass, you got anything else to add?
No, that's it. Let us know, man. We're on all social media platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Halaman, Jelligan, and Falavan. We're on all the gun.
Follow us on our socials. You can find us at From the Gate on all social media platforms. Check out our website, fromthegate.com. I'm your host, Lisi.
Success.
Deuces.
Gia.